Hello, hello. I want to welcome all of you to another hour of truth, information, knowledge, and mystery that you are hard pressed to find anywhere else except right here on the Universal Consciousness Show. My name is Aage, and I'm one of the hosts, and I'm here in the southwest of the United States, and my co host Diana is over in Europe, in Germany, some 7,000 miles away. But Diana hasn't made it quite yet to the show today, so she will show up here in a little bit and she will join us just a little bit later. This summer savings times is really screwing us up because, see, Germany is not on that savings time yet. They're just on the regular time, and we are here, so that separates us another hour, and things get goofed up. But anyway, we'll work it out. And for those of you who like to listen to this show again, you can find it many places, including on Facebook and elsewhere on social media. And also, I archive it at our website at www.universal-consciousness-show.com. And keep a pen and a paper ready because we just might find something you want to write down. And for those of you that want to call a friend of yours that is not on the computer right now, have him listen at 701 719 9704, and he can listen live to the show on his telephone. And also subscribe to our YouTube channel. It's at Universal Consciousness Show. And also join us on the Facebook group, the Universal Consciousness Show. And we haven't really promoted that one much, but we're starting to. So just join us there, and that will help us a lot. And also, excuse me, there is a video documentary on there that talks about also what we're going to talk about today. The mysteries of, is the earth flat or is it round? What's inside of it? And maybe it's like a pita bread. It's flat, but it's hollow. Who knows? Well, maybe we're going to find out here in just a little bit because that's exactly what I'm going to talk about. And for thousands of years, we've been told that Earth was flat. But then again, about 9,000 to 12,000 years ago, they knew it was round. And then they forgot. But why did they know that long ago that the Earth was round? Well, it's kind of obvious. You probably all heard about the Vimana. That's the flying machine that they had back then. And they were both flying in the atmosphere and in space with that machine. So they could see the blue ball, and that's why they knew it was round. In the later millennia, the first mention that I see about the round Earth is in Greek mythology. Some 600 BC is about the first of it. And then in the 3rd century BC, in Hellenistic astronomy, which they call it, there were done some experiments and observations proving that the Earth was round. And from there on, it was gradually accepted across the, excuse my expression here, across the globe, and displaced the flat Earth theory, even back then. Now, Plato, he died in 347 BC, so this was done before that. He taught his students in his school that Earth was round. And Aristotle, which lived from 384 to 322 BC, he made the observation that there are stars that he could see in the northern region of Europe. But these stars, they moved over and disappeared down below the horizon when he got to Egypt and Africa. So if he figured that if the Earth was flat, it would not matter where he was. Now the stars would move across the sky, but they would not move below the horizon line. And that would make perfect sense to me. And now I got my personal story on this, and I'm going to prove Aristotle right. Back in the days when, or 30 some years ago, when I had the flight school in Minneapolis and the air taxi operation up there, I was doing a lot of teaching flying. And every so often you found somebody that was a little high on himself and he thought he knew pretty much everything that, you know, a lot of times these people were sharp, but they were a little high on themselves. So it helped to put them in their place once in a while. And I did that in kind of a fun way. At the same time, I made a bet with them. I told them that if they lost the bet, they owe me a bottle of scotch. Well, I told them that if I can show you how the sun can come up in the west, you owe me a bottle of scotch. And they thought I was half nuts. And of course, you know, they didn't have much of a problem agreeing to that bet because they know that the sun goes down in the west. Okay. So I told them to come out about an hour before the sundown. And I waited. We got an airplane and we waited until the sun was just about down, and we took off and we went flying to the west. And we waited until the sun had gone down below the horizon. And then we put the nose up, climbed at least 800 foot per minute. And by the time that we got up 1,000 or 2,000 or 3,000 feet, the sun came right up above the horizon. And it moved up to the point, I know one time it climbed up to about 12,000 feet, and that sun was way up in the sky. But it had gone down already when we were right down at ground level. So that would tell you that it went down below the horizon. It cannot do that if the Earth is flat. It will go down to the horizon, but it cannot go below it. So I'm sorry, flat earthers, but those are the facts. And I know you got your own stories too, and your own theories and so-called scientific explanations, and some of them sound really good if you don't understand science that well. So there is almost like a religious awakening across the earth right now about flat earth, but when you start looking into it, it just doesn't hold water. And then again, there was a paper issued by Harvard University where they explained they used a form of ground-penetrating radar, and they found continents under the Earth's crust, under the Earth's surface. And also Washington University, I think it was Dr. Vicession, I think the name was. He wrote an analysis of 600,000 seismograms showing another ocean under the Atlantic Ocean. And the Atlantic Ocean is probably maybe around 6 to 7 miles deep on the deepest where it is. That's pretty deep. But this ocean underneath the Atlantic Ocean they found it to be 800 to 1,000 miles deep. Now, chew on that one. It tells us that we haven't been told the truth, maybe for a couple of reasons. First of all, science didn't know. And if they did know, they would definitely lie about it. Now, I would think that the crust was a little thicker. From what I've seen, is it was a little thicker than 1,000 miles. But then again, maybe they're right about that. It could be. So there's an ocean and a huge cavity down there. Well, this is not me saying this. This is science of very respected learning institutions that has come up with these answers to questions. And the thing about it is that they are coming up with these new discoveries that flies in the face of what we have been told before. So if they were going to lie about it, it would make more sense to lie along the party line, so to speak, and stay with the status quo, because I'm sure people would be more comfortable with that. So there are also people who have found the entrances going into these caverns inside of the earth. And I said caverns because there's more than one of them. There are caverns within the crust, and there's a cavern in the middle. Sometimes they found these entrances by accident. And then there is this picture. And this picture it was taken by the ESA-7 satellite, being in a stationary orbit or stationary position right above the North Pole, and was taking a picture straight down. And it shows a 700 to 800 mile wide hole in the North Pole region. And I'm just getting the message that Diana is joining the call here. Are you there, Diana? Nope, not yet. So anyway, when you look at that NASA print showing that 800 or 700 mile wide hole at the North Pole region, this picture was taken 32,000 miles high into space. And it shows very clearly that there is a hole at the North Pole region. So it's obvious what happened. And the computer forgot to slide the ice sheet over, or at least they forgot to slide the ice sheet over when they released the photo. And first, I've had this picture for well over 20 years, and I think it was first leaked, and then since it was leaked, they released it. Now, if you ask NASA about this picture, they do not say it is fake. They say nothing. I remember 20-some years ago when I got a hold of this NASA print first, I wrote to NASA, sent them a copy of it, and wrote to NASA and asked them, is this real? What is it? How old is it? And so on. And I found out that it was taken way back in about the time they went to the moon, or supposedly. So they said nothing. I wrote to them again, and I got no answer. And I think I may have written a third time, but I had no answer. Now I wrote to them on other issues, and they always was very prompt in answering. So there is obvious that there are certain things they don't want to talk about. This picture obviously slipped through the cracks, and it showed the hole into the center of the Earth at the North Pole region. And NASA is good at this, though. It's just like the live feed off the space station, which they're doing now, Whenever, once in a while, you can see a bright light flying by, or you can see a ship. This has happened several times. A ship comes up towards the space station, and NASA cut the live feed. It goes blank. They don't want you to see what's going on. And are Diana with us now?
Yes, I'm here. Hello, everyone, and sorry for the delay.
Oh, hey there. Yeah, the joys of summer savings time, huh?
Yes, right. I have to work. I'm sorry.
Yeah, doggone it. But I guess next week, though, you will be on the same the regular time, so it will be better, right?
Yes, yes, of course.
Oh, that'll be good. That'll be good. Well, I got to talking a little bit about the hole at the North Pole here, and maybe a few things, other things. So I think you will probably catch up a little bit. So you may have some questions about this too, since I'm the guest tonight and you're the interviewer. So just throw the book at me and see what happens.
Okay, I will listen to which point you get, and then I will ask. I have a lot of questions.
Okay, I won't go anywhere.
I just have to see where you are because I didn't hear anything until now.
All right, okay. Sounds good. And of course, if you guys also go to our website, then you can, that's the universal-consciousness-show.com. You'll see a lot of the pictures. In fact, on page 2 there, on the picture gallery, you will see this NASA print showing the 700-800 mile wide hole at the North Pole region. Now, and that's where Admiral Byrd actually, he wrote a diary, and the NASA print of the hole into the earth here, they coincide. They speak the same language. So Admiral Byrd, he talked about green trees and grass and mammoth-like animals, which he found in the North Polar region. This is it in his diary. If you go into our website again, or go into blogs, I posted Admiral Byrd's diary. So you can go there and listen to it. Or, I mean, you read it there. And then there was another guy. He went to the North Pole, or pretty close to it also, and he also went to the South Pole, just like Admiral Byrd. This was Fridtjof Nansen. He was a Norwegian, just like me. That's where I grew up. And he was a polar explorer. And I have 2 of his books. And these are very old books. They have been in the family since they probably were new. And they may have been written somewhere around 1913 or something like that. I think I seem to remember that that year. Now, he makes some astounding statements in those books. He said he was going straight north towards the North Pole. He passed the 80th degree northerly latitude, the 81st degree, the 82nd degree. He passed the 83rd degree northerly latitude, kept going straight towards the pole, and he ended up on the 82nd degree northerly latitude. That doesn't make sense. The further north he goes, there should be a higher number. So he figured, well, something got screwed up here. I turned around, so he went back to the 83rd degree and straight ahead again. He ended up at 82nd degree. So he kept messing around right in that region, trying to find a higher degree of northerly latitude, but he couldn't find it. So he says, well, the sextant and the sky, it must be something wrong here, so I declare this to be the North Pole. Well, you know, That didn't fly with the scientific community, so they discarded his declaration of the North Pole. Now, some writings about him, they say that he was within 4 degrees of the North Pole. But I believe in the books that he actually wrote back then, I think it said 6 or 7 degrees away from the North Pole. And, you know, there were some contentions about this at the time, but it's kind of lost now. So we will just have to presume that he got as far as he could, because I can say that again. He got as far as he could because he couldn't get any further north, because there is no North Pole. Look at that picture again, that NASA print showing the 800-mile wide hole. In the middle of that hole, that's where the North Pole is. And you just can't get there on the ground because it is in the air. And if you look at that picture, that 800-mile wide hole, and then think about to 83rd, 84th degree northerly latitude. If you overlay that 80, let's call it 84 degrees, lay that over the hole from the NASA print, they're going to fit right together. So what Fridtjof Nansen wrote works perfectly with the hole at the North Pole, because he got to the inside rim of that hole, and that's as far north as he could get. Now, Fridtjof Nansen also wrote some other things in there that was really strange. He said that when he was nearing the North Pole, as he called it, he found dead bees on the ice. He also saw big blotches of red and yellow coloring on the ice, which he later deducted was pollen from flowers and plants and trees and so on. And then again, he also discovered, or he felt that was very fine sand blowing in the air. Not all the time, but just once in a while, he ran into this blowing sand. How could that be? How could you have dead bees on the ice over 1,000 miles from the closest green leaf of anything? Or pollen from flowers? None of this makes sense. And then, of course, it is a known fact for people in that region, northern region there, that the Arctic fox in the northern Greenland and elsewhere in the Arctic, the Arctic fox migrate to the north in the wintertime. How can that be? Shouldn't it get colder the further north you go? And why would any living being think of migrating to the north in the winter? Hey, I'm living here in Tucson, and we got something down here called snowbirds. And that's the Canadians and the people from Minnesota coming down here to spend the winter. I mean, they're not that stupid. They wouldn't go to northern Canada in the winter. And neither is the Arctic fox. They're going towards warmer weather. So also among the older fishermen in the most northern part of Norway and the Eskimos in the northern part of Greenland, it is almost common knowledge that there is warm weather in the north. There's also some long-running stories among the Inuits on Greenland about the Viking settlement that was there from about the year 800 to about 1400 AD. During the mini ice age that they had about that time, towards the end of that time period, The Vikings ran out of wood for boats, and they ran out of wood for heating, and many of them died. They froze to death. But the Eskimos kept telling them, go to the north, there's warm weather up there. And finally, the last settlement of the Vikings on Greenland, they headed to the north for warmer weather. They got some Eskimos to guide them up there, and they left some carvings behind saying that they had gone to the north for warmer weather. Just like the Eskimos had told them, you know. And of course, they were never heard from again. But from what we hear also is that there are people that has gotten in and found that opening at the North Pole and gotten in there, mostly by accident, but there are people up there. And there's one book, it's called The Hollow Earth. That book was written by Olaf Jansen actually. And it was in the 1880s. He had a phenomenal experience. He was up in the northern part of the Atlantic fishing, and he got caught in a current that brought him into warmer weather. And he got into a river that ran down. There was huge trees on both sides. And he wrote about this in the book. In the book that he had somebody help him write the book. And in fact, for writing the book, he was put into what they would call a mental institution back then, because everybody knows that that's impossible what he wrote about. So they kind of sequestered him, and I guess we got some noise challenges here, but otherwise I think things are good. And he said that he ran into people on the inside that were 12 foot tall. And there were trees that was bigger than the pine trees in the northwest of the United States. They were very tall, and there were animals that was very big. And he said that he was well treated in there, and he actually went and visited many places. He went through the center of the earth, and he saw a kind of like a brownish yellow sun sitting in the middle of the sky there. And he actually went out the other end of the opening at the South Pole region, and he came out there. They had actually given him a boat, and he came out there, and he was going across the ice, and he came out to the edge of the ice of the South Pole, the Antarctica, and he was discovered by an explorer, fisher, or whatever they would call themselves going there. So he actually was picked up, and he came back home eventually, several years later. This is a phenomenal story, and get your hands on this book, just plain and simple, called The Hollow Earth. And there are some scientific things that he talked about in that was not known at the time, but it is known now. So there is some credibility to the book. Not just, it's obvious it was not just made up, but it was observations that he recorded. Have you heard about this story, Diana?
No.
Oh, that's new to you. Yeah, it's new to.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but we have here a question in the chat room. Somebody is asking if the super winds can bring sand from the desert to the Arctic.
Oh boy, that's a new one for me. I doubt it could go that far, because that will be probably somewhere around, to get into a desert, It's got to be the Middle East, African. So that's going to be at least 6,000 miles. I kind of doubt that it would actually travel that far.
Mhm.
And if
I
the,
have also a new top news, breaking news from Romania right now. It is in this moment in Romania, it is snowing with orange snow. The specialists said in the news that it was never seen before, and they suppose that it is sand from the desert that is in the snow.
really?
Yes, so it is always in the news. It is everywhere with videos and picture. It is really orange snow, and everything is interrupted. The plane, they are not flying. Airports are closed. Everybody is in panic,
Huh.
and they just suppose it is just a coincidence that was this question now. And it is they suppose, the specialists now, the first opinion that can be told in the news in Romania is that is some sand from the desert in the snow. How did it get there? Nobody knows. I hope it's
Huh.
not chemtrails. No.
Well, that could be too, but
Yes.
I think that if it is sand, that is easy to determine. You can take some of it, and you can find out if it is sand
Yeah,
because
they
it's
will. They will, but it's very new. It is right now in this moment. So maybe
snowing.
yes. So it's a really orange snow.
Huh.
And it's in the whole country. And also, the same person in the chat room, it is asking, he's asking you if you know the man on the mountain, and you have here a word. It seems to me like a Norwegian word, Sunmore.
Sun war?
Sunmore, and it is this, this, or it is the Norwegian one, the symbol.
No, I'm not familiar with that. No.
Okay.
No, no. But let me ask you this, though, Diana. Have you ever seen orange sand? I know it.
Orange, pure orange? No, but
Yeah, but I can imagine it exists, but I've never seen it or heard of where it is. So I'm questioning. I don't think it is sand. Maybe there's something else, because if they're spraying things on top of the clouds, you're not going to have snow unless you have clouds. So they could be chemtrails on top of the cloud that is falling into the clouds, freezing and coming down with the snow. So it could be chemicals. That is what
yes.
I
So
think.
I suppose we will hear soon in the news, maybe some lies or something, but we will hear something about it, because
Yeah,
it's a phenomenon that it will be for something, it will be researched.
yeah. And then, of course, the determination that they come up with is the official story. So question that at least twice before you believe it.
Yeah, of course.
Maybe three
But the
times.
phenomenon is real. I saw it with my eyes in the video. I was on my way home in the tram, and I was called from Romania from my brother, and they told me that everything is like they never saw something like this before. Yeah. So what I wanted to ask you also, is there a hole as at the South Pole also, the same size? Hello? Can you hear me?
Oh, yes, I can hear you.
Okay.
I'm
I
sorry.
lost you.
I muted myself to sneeze here, and I forgot to
Okay.
unmute myself. Yes, there is a hole at the South Pole, but it is much smaller.
Okay.
And right now, if you go on Google Earth and go to the South Pole region, everything is white all over. But that's not what we hear from people that is flying down there. There are military people that say there is an opening right where the geographical South Pole is. But of course, you know, Google Earth and the establishment, they're going to cover that up because they don't want anybody to see that. So the hole is much smaller, but it is still there.
Okay. What does it mean for us? Do we know who is living inside the earth, or is it about Shambhala, about this world inside the earth that we hear about? I read about this, and it's called Shambhala.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and there is, they call it the Crystal City, and there are places down there. See, these are not just recent things that has come up. These stories about Shambhala and the people on the inside of the earth, that dates back thousands of years. They speak of that in India. The Rama talks about it. The oldest writing that I found speak of an entrance into the center of the earth is probably some 12,000 years ago. And that dates back before Photoshop or anything, you know, so they have drawings back then of what it was like there. They have drawings of the tall people, like look 10 to 12 foot tall. And there is something to this. And Shambhala actually is, it's somewhat misunderstood. It is in the southern region inside of the South Polar opening. And inside the North Polar opening, there is an enclave that was settled by the Vikings. And they call it Viking land. And otherwise, there is, it is not heavily populated because they regulate their population. They don't do like we do on the outside with the Muslims. They get more stature if they got 16 women and 300 children. I'm exaggerating here. And also the Catholic Church, they forbid condoms and things like that, which perpetuate the population. So there is some wrong thinking here on the outside, and they don't have this wrong thinking on the inside. They care for the environment, they care for themselves, they care for their society, and they are benevolent. And when you think about it, they don't want anything to do with us. Can you understand why?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. We are not very desirable as a species. There are some of us that would fit in very well in there and would be able to understand their way of thinking. But as a mankind on the surface, we have no business being there, and they know it. So I want to compare to something here. I think we're going to forego the break here on this one because there's so much to talk about. Let's talk about, there's something about the moon also that I want to mention, and that is that the moon is also hollow. And I think I'm going to be able to prove that to you. If we look at what we know about the moon, nothing makes sense. The more we find out about the moon, the more questions we get. And accepted science says that the moon is made from titanium and aluminum, for the most. There's other things too. And Earth is mostly made of iron and nickel. Well, you may not have heard that before, but that once you get down below the crust, that's what a lot of it is. And we know from carbon dating a lot of stuff that Earth is about 4 billion years old. Okay, but when we carbon dated the rocks that came back from the moon, we found that the moon rocks, they were about 4.5 billion years old. So what does that mean? Well, it means that the moon is 500 million years older than Earth. It is obvious it was not even formed in the same cloud of dust as Earth was. So it was moved in somehow or drifted in. And the fact that it is not made from it's made from a different material, it supports the same theory. And the moon is it's sitting in an impossible orbit. The capture of the moon theory, that doesn't fly either. It is about 1 in a million that the moon come in from space and get captured in Earth gravity. That just is so difficult. It is almost impossible because of the mass that it has and the speed that it would have. It is almost impossible. So if it was not captured, how did it get here? And where did it come from? Well, again, what I'm concerned, there's only one choice left. It was flown here and parked in orbit. If it is a spaceship, that it would be if that was the case, wouldn't it make sense that it would be hollow and somebody would be inside flying it? Yeah, it would to me. And that is exactly what the Russians are saying. About some 2.5, 3 decades ago, a paper came out from the Russian Academy of Sciences where they were saying, and they were totally convinced, the moon was hollow. And they could see that because there were holes also in the moon going into the surface. And I am convinced that it is hollow. And I'm convinced of that because of what I have seen. There is also writings that comes out of India. And that writing some 12,000 years ago stating in their past there were 2 moons. One was white and one was blue. So what happened to the blue moon? Moons just don't leave orbit. If anything, the gravitational powers of Earth would pull it closer and slow it down. It would eventually crash into the planet. So where did the blue moon go? Well, you can guess on that, but my take is that it was another planetoid, a spacecraft, and it was flown out of here, and they left to somewhere else. Let's look closely at the moon and the orbit it sits in. We know how big the moon is. We know what it weighs. We know how big the Earth is, and we know what it weighs. And we know the gravitational attraction Earth creates, and we know the gravitational attraction of the moon. We also know the speed of the moon, where it travels around the Earth, and which it creates the separation between Earth and the moon because of the centrifugal force. And the centrifugal force and the gravitation together, they create that balance that the moon is parked in. So if you run the numbers on your calculator, well, it's going to be a tough one because you probably run out of numbers, but run it through a computer and you will find that it doesn't come out. The moon is too big and travel too fast to hold the orbit that it is in. It should actually be twice as far out, twice the distance. But then again, if it is hollow, then it would make perfect sense. So if we look at that, the Earth, the moon really should not be there. So the only reason that it is there is because it has to be hollow. There is no other way. That's what the Russians concluded too. Another thing is that when, excuse me, sorry, I had to cough here again. One time that we went from the moon, they dropped the spacecraft back to the moon. They crashed it into the moon to see what would happen. And that moon rang like a gong for hours afterwards. It sounded like a bell. And the bell rings like it does because it is hollow. So another reason why the Russians said that the moon is hollow, because of it rang like a bell for hours afterwards, just like it would be if it was hollow. Does that make any sense, Diana?
Yes, it is also that in talking about the moon, since almost 40 years, the moon was no longer in the focus, so to speak. And suddenly, 2 years ago, America, Korea, and Russia, they declared that and announced officially that they will reach the moon until 2024. And almost funny, let's say like that, China also declared that by that time they will wait for the Americans and the Russians already on the moon. So what could be the reason for this change? Could it be that someone out there told us to wait until the humans will have a green card to go to the moon? Or yeah, maybe. And or it's the discovery that they did that on the moon they found a very important and expensive element that is called helium-3, and it is very important to solve the problem here on the Earth with the energy. So could it be that they think to get this on the Earth, but I don't know if the cost will cover that. They estimated the value of this helium-3 to be around $3 billion. But I don't know, I have no idea if the cost to go to the moon and bring it here will cover that. Or is it that, or is it that someone out there gave us now the green light to go there?
Boy, oh boy. Yeah, I think you're right. We don't have a green card. I think absolutely that. And I tell you, before I answer that, I want to make a correction to something that I said. I think I got the title of the book I mentioned about the hollow earth. That's a good book too. But the one I was thinking of is called The Smoky God. The Smoky God. That's the one that you want to get your hands on and read, because that explains very well what sits on the inside of Earth. Anyway, yeah, we don't have a green card, and we went up there, and in fact, not too awful long ago, I think it was over a little over a decade, or maybe a decade or a decade and a half, we exploded an atomic device on the moon. Why would we do that? And I say we, I mean the Americans did. We were never told, of course, but there was an atomic explosion up there. And that is probably, even if we were considered, that might have been the reason why the green card was withdrawn. There is somebody up there, because you can see it. It's some of the pictures that we are showing on the show here, on the page here. You can see pyramids on the moon. Okay, we are told that there is no atmosphere up there. That's a lie. We're told that it's a dead rock in the sky. Okay, if it is, why is there a lot of pictures marked top secret and not available to the public? And why are there pictures coming out, NASA prints showing spacecrafts sitting on the ground? One of the pictures that I was showing on the place here where you are listening to the show is one of them is a figure that is walking on the surface of the moon. And you can also go to my website, universal-consciousness-show.com, and you can see some of those pictures. And we have pyramids up there. Well, in order for it to be pyramids, somebody has to build it, right? That's kind of obvious. Would they be able to do that without an atmosphere? No, because they would have some reason to, they had to breathe. Now, I don't care if it's an oxygen breather or nitrogen breather. Either one, air has both of those. I know there are some aliens that breathe nitrogen. So somebody was up there, built the pyramids. Somebody is in those caverns. There is one big hole in the west side as you're looking at it in the Sea of Crisis. And if you put a very strong telescope on that, magnifying at least 800 to 1,000 times, you can see little bitty lights going in and out of that opening. So somebody is there, Diana, and
Yes.
I don't think they like us much. That's probably why they didn't want us to come back.
Yeah.
And
And
another,
also because,
yeah, go ahead.
yes, because it's a tiny space left for the show, and I want to ask you about a very, very secret mission of the Americans that it's called Westford 1 and Westford 2. I don't know if you are familiar about that. This is the name of two satellites. The first one was called Westford 1, and it was sent by the American Air Forces in the space in order to disturb the Russian mission in the space. This satellite, Westford 1, it was sent in the space to spread billions of copper needles in the space that they were meant through their frequency to disturb the transmission in the space. And after that, they observed what was happening to the needles. This is really a real event. And one whole week, all the TV programs in Europe, they were stopped and disturbed, and they couldn't transmit anything. And all the transmission on the seas and oceans, in the submarine and in the marine, they were very disturbed. And then they were surprised to see that an unknown object that was coming from a point behind the moon was coming out. It was acting like a huge Hoover, and it was literally sucked. He sucked all these needles from the space, and to speak like that, he cleaned up the space. And then the Americans, they thought that was done by the Russians, and the Russians thought it was done by the Americans. And then Americans, after 1 week, they sent a second satellite called Westford 2 with a double quantity of copper needles, and they spread it again in the space. And it was again this Hoover. Well, it was not a Hoover, but I'm telling like that just to imagine.
Vacuum
Yes.
cleaner, huh? Yeah.
Yes. It was again coming out from the same point somewhere behind the moon and sucked all the needles in the space. And the weird thing, the most weird thing is that we never hear something about that. Why do they drop down the researches, and why does something such important and such amazing like this, it is staying behind the curtains, and we never hear something about that? And why, even though the people they don't know about, why do something like that doesn't come to the light?
Yeah.
What could it be?
Well, I can believe that the American space agency did that. It's right up their alley, trying to screw the Russians up. You know, that's they were very hell bent on being first in space, even though they weren't. But I can see how somebody would do that. Now, what I was not familiar with this particular thing until you mentioned it to me yesterday, and this having putting these very tiny needles in the into space, it is very dangerous. If you had a small one like that hit a spacecraft, it could, as thin as the spacecraft wall is, it would go right through. It create a leak. You would lose the air pressure inside. So I can see why the vacuum cleaner came out, because they had, see, aliens or whoever is there, they had to go through this also in order to come down here. So I think that makes perfect sense that they try to clean it up. And I see that we are up towards the end of the show here now, but let's continue a little bit beyond this. I would like to do a mind experiments with the mastermind. I would, you know, we did this once or twice before, Diane. I created that mastermind, and I had some very good feedback on it. So let's do it again. This ball of mud we're living on called Earth has some real problems, and if we can affect a few 100,000 people watching, or I mean watching and listening to this show, if we can get them to join minds for a good purpose, I think we're all better off. When I talk about the mastermind, that is the principle of where two or more minds are united in harmony, they create a third mind, which has the potential mind power of the two or more of them multiplied by each other. That is powerful. I remember as an example, I remember last fall when, last summer actually, when the hurricanes kept coming over from Africa and going. There were one that was a Category 4 hurricane sweeping up along Cuba, coming and going straight for Florida. And you know, when a hurricane goes over water, it picks up more moisture, more steam, and more power. They fully expected it to possibly be a Hurricane 5 by it hit Florida. And then we had George Norrie on Coast to Coast AM radio show late that evening before. He got on the air and he was talking about this hurricane that could very well devastate Florida. And he said, let's all get together and visualizing it fizzling out. And we all did. And when that hurricane hit Florida, in many places, it was not even a hurricane. You know, it was less than 75 miles an hour. So that hurricane fizzled out when every computer model said it would be at least a 3 to 5. What happened? It was the mastermind created by George Norrie and Coast to Coast AM listeners that made that thing fizzle out. Because we visualized trees standing still, not being bent over or blown over. We visualized being normal. This is the kind of stuff we can do with the mastermind principle. So let's try to do that today, here, right now. I'm all open for people to send me emails or get in touch with me or things that we may want to work on in this arena later on. But for right now, there is so much contention. There is so many problems. There is media, of course, you know, I mean, war and sex are the two things that sells the most. So they are harping on war, you know, we're just on the verge of nuclear war. No, it's not going to happen. Not in this timeline where I am. But we need to solidify that timeline. And there is one thing that even I agree with some of the theoretical physicists, and Albert Einstein said this whole universe is made from an energy called love. So if we, as a unified mind here, want to concentrate on something, it doesn't matter if you're doing it right now or if you are listening to this show 3 days from now. If you join in on the thoughts and the mental images that we put together, those thoughts and mental images leave the physical, going out of the physical into a higher vibratory world where time and space does not exist. With other words, if we do it now, or if you are listening to this 3 days from now, the effects of it will be now. Because 3 days from now, there is only now also. And time and space does not exist as we know it. So let's do that. Let's just try to sit comfortable. And if you are driving in your car when you're listening to this, if you're flying an airplane, definitely do not do this right now. Wait until you get on the ground. And if you're operating machinery or doing anything at work, wait with it until you are in a place where you're quiet and you can give it full attention. Because if you do this while you're doing something else, your presence of mind will not be quite the same. And for those of us that is in a place where we can do it, sit here and close your eyes for just a little bit. Think about absolutely nothing. And then just listen to what I say. We know the whole universe is created from love. Love is the most powerful force in the universe. Visualize the earth as you see it. I don't care if you see it as flat or round or square, it doesn't matter. Visualize it as you see it. And keep saying over and over again, I love you, I love you, I love you, I love you, I love you. Put emotion with it. Keep that colorful mental image in your mind. Consider it is done. Earth is showered in love. I love you. I love you. I love you. I love you. Do this on your own for a couple of minutes. And it's going to sound like dead air, but let's just keep doing it for a couple of minutes. I love you. 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 See that colorful images of Earth. Look at it. and say, I love you. I love you. I love you. Love is surrounding the earth. It penetrates everything. It is with everything and everybody. Love is all there is. Earth is love. Consider it done. Earth is loved. Contention, disagreements will end. It's harmony. Wow, that was powerful. Okay.
Yeah. You know what? This reminds me of a fact that I never thought about. Do you know how the ancient people did in order to cut a sequoia tree? You know the sequoia, I don't know if I pronounce right in English, the sequoia tree this, is the big tree.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, in the ancient time, they didn't have nothing to cut it. And in order to cut it, they get around the tree, the people, they get around this huge tree and they concentrate all of them in the same time. And they told to the tree, I hate you, I hate you, I hate you. And within few days, the tree died on his own and felt.
Yeah.
So this is the proof that everything that you say is true. And we also can remember the words of Jesus that told us, wherever on the earth 2 or more people will speak in my name, I will be also there.
Mm-hmm.
So this is enough. Yes, this is enough to see the real meaning of your words.
Yeah, and he's credited to say something else too, that, you know, with God, all things are possible.
Yeah, right.
All things. How far does your mind want to stretch in order to accept the concept of all things? That's one to think about.
Yeah.
And since we are running over anyway, we have a little time here. There is a story. We're talking about plants. There's The Secret Life of Plants is a book out there. It's a wonderful book. I have 1 or 2 of them sitting on the shelf somewhere, and they're talking about actually that plants are alive and they know what you think. That doesn't sound right, does it? Just dumb plants, right? No, they're not.
No.
Because you can take 2 same kind of plants in 2 pots. You can concentrate on one of them and tell them, I love you, you're wonderful, you're beautiful, I love you. And then the other one, you tell them, you're a rotten piece of dung, I hate you. And just shower it with negative energy. You will see, it's not a may here. This is, you will see that the one you tell I love you to will prosper, it will grow faster, will be bigger than the ones that you said I hate you to. It will very likely die if you keep telling the plant that you hate it. That's the power of the mind.
Yes, this is also this was also researched by Masaru Emoto in his experience with the water. as we know that all the matter is made by water. Our body is 77% or even more water, and the plants also. He also did such experience with rice and with plants, and there was 3 recipients with rice, and they on the first recipient they told every day, I love you, and the second one was ignored totally, and the third one it was told, I hate you and you are stupid, and all the bad words you can think about. And after a while, the first, where it was told that the words I love you, it was very flourished and in a very nice state. The second one that was ignored, it was neutral, so it was stayed like before. And the third one, where it was told I hate you, it was damaged and black, and it had a very bad smell, so it was broken. I don't know the words.
Yeah.
And yes, so he researched about this, about the power of the mind, and actually the vibration of the words, because every word that we are speaking, even though it's only in mind, it has a certain vibration, and the vibration is interacting with the vibration of the plant, with the water inside the plant, with the water inside our body, and the effect. It is very, very phenomenal. If you can research for the experiments of Masaru Emoto, his researches, you can see the water that was told I love you in the state of when it was crystallized. The crystals of water, they have a very harmonious pattern, like it was done for a very famous picture or something. And crystals where the water was told I hate you, they have a very ugly form, like you would look at a hurricane or something like that, and the colors are very brown and dark, while the other, where it was told I love you, there are shiny and blue and like a crystal, and the form are very symmetric, and this is everything we need in order to know what we are doing with our thoughts in our body.
Yeah.
And in the plants, of course.
Yeah, and in fact, since we got on to the plants, there's one more experiment that they talk about in the Secret Life of Plants, the book, is that there was a scientist that he hooked up a plant to a lie detector.
Yeah,
And
I know.
and
Yes.
hey, we found out that plants can't lie, right? No, what they actually was doing is that he was trying to get reactions from the plant. So he stood next to the plant, hooked up to the lie detector. So he said to himself, I'm going to burn the leaf. So he lit a match and he held the match towards the leaf, and he burned the leaf a little bit. The same time, he could see the lie detector going off frantically. The plant reacted. The plant knew that he was going to burn the leaf. Another time, he stood next to it, he lit the match, and he reached towards the leaf, but he had no intention of burning the leaf. And there were no reaction on the lie detector. So the plant knew he had no intention of burning the leaf. Wow.
Yes, I don't know if you are familiar with that, but it was a very famous trial about a criminal that was convicted, and the witness was a plant. Because he murdered someone in a room where was nobody else except the victim that was dead, and there was like a room with many plants, and in the trial, they used the reaction of the plants of this person that they came on that day in the room, and the plants, all of them, they reacted negatively at one person, and he was convicted by the court as a criminal only by the witnesses of the plants. This was very famous. It was a documentary. I saw it on TV about that.
Wow. Well.
Yes, so it's really real. And I also remember you wrote in your book, you also, as you were young in Norway, you were working on a farm, right? And I remember now suddenly that in your book you are talking about species of trees, that they are connected, they are entangled under the earth. And when you do something to one of them, the other one, they will feel it.
Yeah. Yeah. If you have like any tree that spreads by the root system, they're not separate trees. They're actually one organism that has many different expressions of itself above ground.
Yes.
Yeah. And I see I have a question here from Stian over in Norway, I guess it is. He talks about putting vibration into the water. Since we are going off on the esoteric route here, let's talk about that a little bit, because this can really help our health. And I don't do it all the time, but I do once in a while, and I should do it all the time. And that is that when you sit down to eat, look at the food and tell it, I love you. I love you. It will nourish my body. It will make me stronger and healthier. If you say something like that, when you look at the water, put the love energy into the water before you drink it. And you will find, you may not feel it much, but it is, you are absorbing that love energy. And if you visualize it at the same time with bright white light or whatever other color that you feel is most beneficial to you, blue is a good one, and light green is another healthy color. So there are other colors that you can use for specific purposes. For those of you that are into color therapy, that is white may not be it. White is more spiritual. So
it is blue. It is blue.
Yeah,
the
blue
best
too.
color. Yes. As a matter of fact, I do this every day. I restructure the water. I learned that from the book The Zero Point and the Zero Limits from Dr. Joe Vitale, where they learn you, they teach you to restructure the water. Dr. Hu Lin, that healed through Ho'oponopono, a whole mental diseases hospital in Hawaii, he says that you can restructure the water if you put it in a blue glass bottle in the sun. So you take a normal water and you put it in a blue colored glass bottle in the sun within 2 hours, or no longer than 2 hours. It doesn't have to have a metal around or something, so just glass. And you can put a note on the bottle where you write, I love you, I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you. You can stick the note on the bottle just like that, in order that the water can read the note. And the water will be restructured. This water was researched in many labors, and they saw that the structure of the water was completely different after the 2 hours when it stays in the sun with these words, because the vibration of the words, it will be transmitted in the structure of the water. So the the crystal of the water, they will be very harmonious and they will have an healing effect. And according to Dr. Hulin and to Ho'oponopono and Joe Vitale, this water will remove all the error from your system, just like in a PC when you do reboot. So it is the same procedure as in a when you do a reboot in a computer. So you will put the computer in a previous date, and all the errors will be removed. It is exactly like that as the blue water. When you drink it, it will remove all the errors from your system that you are not aware of. And it is very important when you drink water, drink it aware. Be aware about that. Drink it with love and see the water, visualize the water going through your body like a bright white light and healing everything. And this is also very important when you eat. Everything that you eat, put love inside and be aware. Don't eat and think about a credit that you have in the bank or whatever. So when you eat a strawberry, let's say, just look at the pattern inside the strawberry, admire the flavor, the colors. It was all created for us. So don't ignore that. Don't think about your bank account while you're eating a strawberry. Just enjoy it, yes, and think about and put love into it. No matter what you eat and no matter what you drink, if it's done with love and if you transmit the vibration, the good vibration of love, love is a universal medicine. If you put the vibration of love in everything, everything will work like a healing for you. You don't need anything else.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you're at the dinner table, thoughts should be positive. No talking about flat tires. Just leave everything, leave everything else out of the house. Just don't deal with it at dinner because that food absorbs your thoughts when you ingest it. In fact, years ago, when I lived down on the prairie here, I used to have the 5-gallon, about 20 liters, 5-gallon water bottles that we used for drinking water. Turn them upside down so it became a dispenser type of thing, and we put a crystal in the bottom, and we put "I love you" all around it. And it structured the waters. I think also had magnetite rock in it on one or two of them. And what happened when I took the water from that dispenser, the structured water, I put it in an ice tray, put it in the freezer so we have ice cubes, then sometimes I walk in there and I can see in the middle of the ice cube there's an peg of ice sticking up, maybe sometimes 2 inches tall above the ice, because water travels up the energy spike coming out of the water. And you will see this once you structure water. If you put it in an ice tray, put it in the freezer, you'll see a spike coming out of the middle of the ice tray. And that's an indication that you have structured water. So do this. And
yes, you know that it was discovered in the quantum medicine. It is very, very recently. I don't know if everybody knows about that. The water has its own memories and it's carrying information. And when the water is going into the cells in our body, they discovered that the water atom is too big to go into the cells. And the water, they will, in order to go into the cells, it will be transformed into wave, from particle to wave.
Yeah.
That means it's like a teleportation. It's only the information that goes through and not the matter. So we discover now the real quantum physics inside our body. So be aware, the conclusion now, be aware about your thoughts and be aware in every moment, because you are in a permanent dialogue with yourself in every moment. So be aware and be careful what you are telling to yourself.
Yeah, because you're talking to yourself all the time. We have all these conversations and private conversations and arguments in our head. Of course, we win every argument, but we're still not all positive all the time. We got to watch this, because what we allow to dwell in our mind the most, that is what we're going to have in our life. So we're
Right.
getting down to the end here, and
Yes.
let's see. What if I put you on the carpet? If you wanted to talk to the whole world, Diana, what would you tell them? I know I never asked you this before.
The first law that I would learn the people is that they should lose their memories, and they should start to love themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And we also, before we stop, we also have another question from the listener, Stian, I think it's Norwegian. Is there any correlation between crop circles and positive speaking to water? And what kind of crystal did Aage use? And what is structured water? Explanation for non-English listener.
Structured water, that is, the energy is not defined very well in accepted science. You got to step into quantum physics to understand that, and that is it's a quantum field that is attached to the that is housed in the crystal, and it released into the water, and it is a positive influence. So I guess that's probably as far as we have here, with 1 minute left of the show to explain. Crop circles. And I don't know how the different motifs that you show in crop circles probably could have some references to water, but that is not my field. I have not looked into that much, so I don't know what to say.
And what kind of crystal did you use to
It was
the water?
just a regular quartz crystal.
Yes, I also know about it. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, we're down to the end of the show here, so come on back and listen to us next week. We're going to find something incredible to talk about, and as it looks on the schedule, we have we have a phenomenal guest coming up next week. We're going to talk about the real power of the mind, photographic memory, and how to organize the mind so you can do some amazing things with it. So we will do that. And for now, Diana, we are done. So until next week, take care of yourself.
Thank you. Bye-bye.